So today's presenter, again, I'm Joe LeCompte. I'm with PMG. I've been here for over 10 years and have successfully deployed over 30 service catalogs. These deployments have ranged from basic IT self-service through more complex business solutions such as onboarding and all the way to full IT financial management, where we're taking all the costs of IT and distributing back out to the business. Again, we also have Eveline Oehrlich of Forrester. She's a principal analyst serving infrastructure and operation professionals. She has more than 20 years of experience working with IT organizations in the definition and development of the IT service delivery process. A quick overview of who PMG is. PMG has been around for over 16 years, focusing on the Global 2000, helping them automate their business process. Our primary product is the Enterprise Service Catalog, which combines a front-end e-commerce interface that's coupled to a very flexible and powerful drag-and-drop workflow, and then back-end integration into enterprise-class products from companies such as SAP, HP, IBM, CA. Our customers include, some examples there include CVS, Humana, Siemens, Lockheed Martin. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Eveline and let her share her wisdom with you.
Great. Thank you, Joe, and thanks everybody for being here on this great day to share with you some details with regards to a service catalog. I'm hoping you can all hear me, and I hope you can also see the slides. Again, thanks for PMG to have me here. I've been in this space for quite a while now. I've been with Forrester for 6 years, and one of my research area is the service catalog. So let's get rocking and rolling to talk a little bit about, first of all, try to give you some ideas on how you can reinvent your customer experience, and then hopefully move your service catalog beyond IT into the rest of the company. And sorry, Joe, that my last name is such a tongue twister. It's really one which challenges many folks. Quickly, agenda. We'll do a little bit of context setting. Then we'll talk a little bit about the new paradigm of service management, some motivating factors why you should consider the service catalog activity, program, or whatever you call a journey. Either you continue it as you already have started it, or you are just going to start it, or you're way down the road already. Maybe that's where you are. Then we'll see a little bit the new phases of IT, and then as we get a little deeper into it, I'll talk you through the service catalog as a catalyst for change. And then hopefully you can take down some notes and bombard us with questions at the end. I know Joe will come on and we'll do a little introduction to PMG as well, and then hopefully you have lots of questions. All right. IT organizations are facing the perfect storm. Let me explain that. If that's a good thing or a bad thing, at this point in time, I think we're seeing a variety of new realities which are shaking the foundations of IT organizations. The first one is quite the most strong one, I think, that the power is back in the hands of the customers. And we say again because it used to be that way. But in the past, due to mobility, bring your own device, the variety of technology advances, social media, our customers, meaning our end customers, and also the customers we serve in IT, have, again, a very powerful. I have a slide to that later on in a little bit more detail. Technology is the evolution of technology is moving faster and faster, and it's getting more confusing. If I look at my teenage daughters, it's a great attest for that they know more about some of the things than like Twitter than I should, or that I am right now, and that's sometimes a bit scary. We're seeing that services are replacing products. So in the past, organizations were offering products, widgets, gadgets. Today, organizations are needing to think about how to offer services and what services. And again, this is think across the entire value chain, because the consumers of our services of the company of whatever, United Airlines or GSK or Synovia Ventis, those customers, those end customers, are supported by a variety of businesses who are our customers. So sometimes I hear from IT, so what? We don't really have anything to do with them. Well, yes, you do, because you are part of the value chain, and IT is becoming so much more critical. There's nothing today, really, picking your kids up, going to the airplane, going to a restaurant, which doesn't touch IT. Users have much higher expectations also. This has to do with the shift in demographics. This has to do with the competitiveness of what users are seeing at their home and in places where they are doing business. They bring that back to the company, and they bring those expectations to us in IT. The need for systems engagement, the change and what we're seeing, what types of engagements are there and need to be modified is also something which is facing us as a storm. We'll have a little more details for that later on. And then, of course, the challenging economic context. We're seeing about 2% growth across the world, not a lot of growth. So we're seeing some challenges here. So let me introduce you to the age of the customer. If you go back in history, 1900, 1960, we called it the age of manufacturing. That's when Ford and Boeing and Procter & Gamble introduced mass manufacturing. Then we entered the age of distribution. That's the time when I grew up, born in 1963. I turned 50 this year. Lots of things we saw. We saw Walmart and Toyota and UPS. Then we entered the age of the information. The time I was in undergrad and graduate school, we finally had PCs to connect supply chains and so on. And information was actually, a lot of information was flowing amongst. Today, we have empowered users which demand new ways. These are these customers which are part of organizations to get certain experiences from us in the organization. Now, I talked a little bit about the technology evolutions, and I'm sure you've seen all of those. BYOD, mobile, cloud, smart, social, big data, agile. Two other things, consumerization and industrialization is driving much of these evolutions, and it's going faster and faster, sometimes overlapping and sometimes competing and completing each other, which create new challenges. For us, all these technologies are, of course, important, but really the two I want to focus on is the industrialization and the consumerization. The industrialization, to some extent, I sometimes call the back end. That's what we do to make ourselves much more efficient, to make ourselves more automated, to streamline things. The consumerization is what we do or what our company does to consume our products. In our case, it's we're IT to consume IT better. And that's really where service and the word service catalogs hit very, very well. Now, there's a couple of challenges we're facing. With all these technologies, we see a tremendous amount of complexity. Now, this complexity is growing. No matter if we are adding additional clouds, if we're thinking about social media activities, if we continue virtualization, and any other new things which might come tomorrow, which we haven't maybe yet seen, which are hitting us on this consumerization. The challenge here is that our manual ability to manage all of that is no longer possible. We need to start thinking about automating and accelerating this ability to industrialize and consumerize with automation, and that's really where the service catalog fits. Now, if we take consumerization and industrialization apart, there's a variety of things. First, it needs to come in a way it's agile and it needs to be productive. Second, it needs to be predictable and useful, because I've seen organizations which have introduced consumerization, but it wasn't necessarily useful, and it wasn't necessarily making these employees productive. Third, it needs to be valuable and cost effective, because we have to look at the cost. IT's budget isn't going up tremendously. We see some slight increase, but not necessarily. We're not getting additional staff. We're not getting additional hardware. We might get a little bit more operational expenses allowed to leverage. But still, we need to think about it needs to be valuable and cost effective, and we need to have a few surprises. One challenge I see that there are too many surprises in IT. If you go to yourself in the morning, your desktop or your laptop, or you dial into something else, I can tell you, you will have some surprises. And I think that's really something where the consumerization and industrialization becomes very, very important, that we have consistent experience. So what does that mean for service management? Well, the first thing is, in the past, if you are ITIL, an ITIL shop or ITIL person, you recognize the bottom left. I call it the donut slide. This is the typical way we've done service management in the past. We have applied best practices, ITIL or others, to allow ourselves to be much more supply chain oriented. That's good. I'm not saying ITIL is bad. ITIL has its place. ITIL is good. Its adoption is here. But it's not the only thing. We need to connect that best practice of working and streamlining and industrializing to the outside in. It's got to be aligned to what our users, or actually I like to change your language here, your customers and consumers demand. We call that outside in. business-oriented IT organizations are providing these services which are in demand by their users. Now, not at any cost, with exposed costs and understanding of costs and conversations, and that's really where service catalogs start. We also need to stop pushing the ITIL Kool-Aid to some extent, meaning we need to really start focusing on the customer experience, moving from the pain on the right-hand side to the pleasure on the left-hand side. Now, for the ladies in the audience, we all know that the left-hand side is not pleasurable, but we all do that for some particular reason. Now, there are a variety of companies who are doing a variety of things related to what I said. We call them the new IT organizations. What are they doing? If you look at them, they're expanding their use of agile software. They're using infrastructure as a service and or SaaS. They're increasing their open source. They're much better in business intelligence. They're using in mobile and smartphones to collaborate to work. And they're increasing the deployment of collaboration. So a complete different karma of IT organizations. The old school IT, and I hope I don't insult you, they're still doing the outsourcing of application support and maintenance. They're reducing software vendors. They're consolidating. They're upgrading. Not saying that those things are not necessarily needed, because to some extent they're important as well, but they shouldn't be the highest priority. And these are the successful organizations which we see today going down this path of a service catalog and a service portfolio. Why should you do that? I have 4 motivating factors. If you don't think that yet you have maybe no reason to do that, let me share with you some details. The first one is this one. We asked, to what extent do the following statements describe your IT organization's processes and capabilities? And on the bottom, you see the horizontal, where IT rates IT positively, and on the vertical, you see where business rates IT positively. So really, one versus the other. On the right-hand side, you see delivers high-quality, timely end-user support that anticipates employee customer needs. Well, IT really thinks very highly of themselves. If you look at that's about 60%, right? If you look at the business, not so. Only 35% say that. Same for collaboration with the business on strategy. Not a lot of collaboration the business thinks we're doing, where IT thinks they're doing a great job. So this is an alignment challenge, and it's a true challenge with regards to what and where we need to start taking some actions. A second motivating factor, this is a little bit of a stick, because I usually talk to most of my teenage daughters just about sticks and carrots, but I use that example also for customers. The other stick is the sustainability. When we asked our customers, has your group or department used or will use a third-party consumer for any of the following services, you can see that IT outsourcing is quite an attractive alternative. 36% said in 2011 that they were doing and going for IT outsourcing versus in 2010, 17%. IT projects or systems integration, so a lot more integration happening. And then business process outsourcing. This business process outsourcing, I think, is an interesting point. Not sure why they're doing that. In some cases, it obviously is important because you get your payroll or some other things done. But some things might just be opportunities for your IT team, for the IT team, to help in those business services. The third, and I cannot move my slide. I'm not sure why. Okay. Joe, can you see my slide move?
I can see your mouse move. I can't. There it goes.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. The third reason is suitability, the third motivator, suitability. So here, interestingly, when we asked a variety of, or looked for a variety of business trends, we found that there's a lot of employees which are changing their communication habits. They're using technology, social technology, personal devices, and the internet to do a variety of things. So these employees at some point are, and they are already in your organization. There will be more of those coming in. Again, I use my teenage daughters as an example. I cannot send an email to my daughters to get any response. I have to either Tumble, or I have to Facebook, or sometimes I even have to tweet them. Texting is ancient old technology also. The second thing is that a lot of our employees will be global and are already global. Many of our organizations are across the world. I work with folks from all over the world in all kinds of time zones to manage projects. So thinking about the suitability of what you're delivering and when it is available is very important. What we're finding that service desks, for example, customer help desks or service desks are challenged with the 24/7 support. So again, think of the use here of a service catalog to allow, or self-service capability to allow people to get on and off and do things at all times and everywhere in the world. The fourth one is actually my favorite one. I call it the MOOS. MOOS stands for IT spending to maintain and operate the systems and organizations and equipment, meaning the stuff you do to keep things going. The email going, the SAP up, the CRM working, whatever applications you're supporting. And what we're seeing here, if you look at the total column, IT organizations spending 72% of their budgets to keep the MOOS going. It only allows them, that's actually a calculation mistake here, it's 29% to do new initiatives, 19% to do new initiatives. And new initiatives for whatever programs, to make new programs happen, bring your own devices, mobility, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, that is not enough. So what I keep saying to my clients is you need to start thinking about reducing this MOOS. And this MOOS can only be reduced in a way where you can save, where you can shift resources, where you can reduce activities which are normal manual labor intense, and they can be replaced by some automation. Perfect situation for a service catalog. All right, so we talked about the perfect storm. I showed with you what the new service management at the very high level could look like. What are some motivating factors? So let's go and look at the new faces of IT. What are these new faces of IT? Well, the first one is dynamic. Dynamic IT means that we are supporting business needs with internal and external resources and provide seamless access and support to all resources for business users all the time and anywhere. If you're flying to Atlanta, if you're on the ski slopes, if you like to, if you are in Timbuktu, and if you are on your own device, if you're on your laptop from the company, or if you are somewhere within a organization where you might need to tap in. So this is very important. Second, social IT, which connects the business users with internal and external people and products to enable high-performance, collaborative business processes. You've heard of the knowledge workers. This collaboration, the knowledge worker who works and helps a variety of constituencies solve their problem, is important as well. And last but not least, the smart IT, where we leverage a set of support practices and processes so that we can actually reduce that MOOS and become much faster and easier to deal with than we have been in the past. So the first one here on the dynamic is certainly the new engagement model. Let me quickly describe that because it's important. There are a variety of touch points. We have customers who dial and work with us. We have partners. We have employees. And then, of course, there's, to some extent, smart products who are now starting to show up in the environment. The system of engagement here, where we are serving, answering, enabling, taking on tasks and decisions, and so on, we call it the system of engagement. Those things are really going to be changing in the future and are very important focus. In the past, we had a lot of system of record activities where we are doing ERP packages, we're recording transactions, we're maintaining state and status, we're doing long development and deployment cycles in AD and application development. Those are still necessary for some things. Of course they are. They're not going away. But the balancing act is important, because we need to understand that some of the things we have to focus on to get this age of the customer, to be in this age of the customer, are to improve these systems of engagement touch points with new channels to reach us in IT for our consumers of our services. Now, many times, before we even go further, we have to understand what's the service. And I get this question on a daily basis, and I get it in events when I travel. Anywhere I go, I get this question, okay, how do I define a service? Well, if we think about it, it's really only what when it is whatever is important for the consumer of the service. This could be, in some cases, an IT service of provisioning a laptop. This could be a business service of onboarding an employee with multiple sub-services underneath, such as the asset provisioning, the access provisioning. But it really is what the consumer thinks of it. So many times I get the question, so is there a service taxonomy? Is there one service taxonomy? Well, in some cases there is. But is there a right way or a wrong way? Not really. Just recently spoke to CIO who said, I need to go into a board meeting and I need to define 4 key services we're delivering. Can you help me? I'm like, do you have a straw man? No. Well, let's figure it out together. And we defined quickly by him looking from the outside in, what does his team, his work, his group do for the consumer? Then we need to understand how to define these services, including what we deliver. That wonderful 3-letter acronym of SLA, a service level agreement. The definition of the service, what are we promising, when are we delivering it, how we're delivering it, and potentially, if you can, how much does it cost? Or if you don't have those details, at least get some indication to that. Services also allow you then to pursue a portfolio of services which you can then manage. And those, then you can assign service owners which allow you to manage it, just like in a restaurant where you have the bar, the kitchen, the sommelier, whatever, the folks who are doing certain things and they're specialists at it and they know it and they manage it. And that's really what a service portfolio is. And then usually a service is constructed of sub-services, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on when we talk about service families. So just as a little bit of a reminder here, the service really, that is the key to industrialization. We've got to start thinking about how we engineer our services in the future. So let me give you an example here. This is a value chain. Very typical. Infrastructure and operations team who has some kind of an infrastructure or even more. Then there is an application owner who has some kind of an application. Then there is a business team who has some kind of a business service on top of the application. And then there's the business. So if we start thinking about it in services, we have a much better way to understand and to orchestrate and correlate these kinds of things. And the next section is really all about that. How and what is that service catalog? How can it be a catalyst for change? The first thing, back to what I just talked about, is understanding your service hierarchy. Now, I've seen customers who do a bottoms-up, an inside-out, or a top-down. All depends on where you want to go. The easiest one for us in IT, of course, and that's what I see mostly, is to develop our service catalog from a bottoms-up, because we know exactly our databases, our systems, our networks, our things we do. Nothing wrong with that. But and that's good if your consumer, maybe your enterprise architecture team or your application development team, or maybe even your end users, your consumers are consuming an IT service. But there are many things which need to be connected to an application service, treasury system or an image library or a back office system or some sales systems, which are then supporting a business service, like an order to cash or some financial cycles, which then are part of the business process. Many times I get actually questions from the business process management team saying, how can we work with IT so that we start figuring out how to align? And that's actually also a great way, because businesses have business processes, which have business capabilities, which are broken down into business services, which then are sitting on top of application services and on infrastructure services. And no matter if you are planning on going into the cloud, staying in your own data center, if you are leveraging a variety of other IP, BP, AAS application services, et cetera, you need to understand how those things work together. This is a very, very important slide to remember when we go to the next level. The second is you can start working on your technical service catalog necessarily without the business, because you know exactly what you have. You know the kind of consulting, the web hosting, whatever IT services you have to offer. And then you can start working with your business relationship managers or your business application managers or your service owners on the business service catalog and bring them together. Here's an example of, and I use Siebel, as we inside Forrester just shifted to Salesforce. Thank you very much, Forrester. We shifted from Siebel to CRM, so at some point I'll update this. But here's a CRM. The CRM is the business service with a variety of IT services underneath it. You have, for example, the client services, you have the distributed services, you have the data services. Each of these are owned by service managers. And the business service of CRM, which is typically serving the marketing and sales organization, has also a service manager. And by having that service catalog, and not just having it out there, but by wrapping your service management processes around it, such as incident, problem, change, config, release, you're now connecting your outside in, meaning your presentation of what you do and what you have, to the inside out, the management, the service management practices you have done, and you've actually connected the two. Inside Forrester, we've actually dropped IT from our service management and automation playbook because of that, because we wanted to make sure that the work we do, we connect the service management activities, which we do to be much more industrial, reduce the moves, and save costs, to the outside in on all things such as the service catalog. Now we come to the point where I give you some steps. I think you will have these slides available, so you don't need to write them down. The first thing, define a service family. That's the highest level. Think of your family. Think of your family tree. That could be the trunk. It's usually service families align with functional areas. Second, you define the services within the families. That is your starting point to work with the information you have from your customers. Consulting services. So that's one. Again, onboarding of an employee. That's a business service. Again, those could all be, again, into another service family. It all depends on who and where and what you're doing. The third, you then map these services to existing customers. You map and you validate them. Are they really being used? Don't go down a service catalog journey without doing the validation, because you could end up, I've seen customers who send me spreadsheets of over 500 services, and I'm just going, no, cannot be that these are all used. Let's see if these are used, or have a conversation with your end customers, your consumers, and are they really going to use them, and have they used? That's really that discovery phase of what is there. And then, of course, you also need to go out and see if there's any other initiatives inside your organization. It happens to me all the time that I connect with one company, 2 different groups, they talk to me, and they say, I want to do that. And I said, did you know that Michael in your EA team or in your service group or whatever, we just talked and maybe you should connect? Happy to do that for customers. But still, you do that yourself, you discover some initiatives you can tie into. Now, with regards to these service catalog categories, again, you have a variety of consumers. So you could be for the CEO, which is business enablement. It could be for somebody in the sales organization of sales forecasting. It could be infrastructure services such as WAN, connectivity, IT assets, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just a conceptual slide. And then here is an example slide of business services, sales forecasting, online ordering, policy claim payment, application services of database query or SaaS or email. And then infrastructure services such as WAN and SAN and whatever else is out there. Again, there is no right or wrong way to do a service catalog. That's actually the beauty. So that's why I tell customers, don't be afraid. If you ever have a catalog you want to run by me, I'd be more than happy to do that. And many of the vendors, including PMG, have already a standard set of templates which you can get immediately and leverage your service catalog journey. Step 4, you then map the expectations and dependencies to the services, meaning what and where does it need to be? Does the onboarding need to be 4 weeks or 4 days? You define the service owner, somebody in the business and somebody in IT. Sometimes finding a service owner in IT can become difficult. This is a change in attitude, behavior, and culture, and potentially how you work. You cannot have a service catalog and a service item without an owner, because the owner will need to do some continual service improvement on it. We'll get to that a little bit later. And then you map your dependent services, your processes of vendor lead times, you found OLAs and SLAs, and from there, you discover them, and then you establish them. In step 5, that establishing means you have a conversation of the multiple subtasks which align to that overall SLA. So if you are, for example, saying that you need to onboard an employee for 4 days, You can't have an OLA of getting you a laptop 8 days because you will not make your service level agreement of 4 days. So you have to have that conversation inside, and then you have to have that conversation with your business user to see if they are if you're meeting their expectations. That's step 6. You define, establish, and discuss these SLAs with your customers. Are they acceptable? Are they expecting something else because you are adding and wanting to add value? Step 7 becomes a little bit of a challenge in many organizations. In some cases, we just don't have the cost. In some cases, we just need to figure out, okay, maybe it's the cost of an asset. Maybe it's the cost of the full-time equivalent. Maybe we need to look deeper and maybe bring somebody from our finance group to help us. The guidance I can give you is don't over-engineer this. And as I'm an IT professional since 25 years, I love to over-engineer things as well. But sometimes good is good enough. You can always go back and improve that cost factor over time. And tools help you to do that because you can actually tie into a variety of data sources to track some of those cost items to give you a much better perspective. And then last, you are then ready for implementation. You develop your portal, you market it, you communicate it, you have a nice whatever coffee talk or donuts, pizza, you introduce it, and you manage it. You manage it, you measure it, and you continuously refine it. You cannot forget the last 3 because I've seen multiple service catalog engagements which were nice, I call them lipstick on the pig, but they weren't really doing anything to improve. And improvement can only be done if we engineer it and we manage it. So let me explain to you quickly that life cycle. So we have a possible PMO group who has a variety of services in development. This could be large projects, medium projects. They probably don't know some of the smaller projects, but maybe they are. If it's a good functioning PMO, they should. They also then bring those into our team in the service catalog. Retired services are also important, which we need to think about because not every service will be all the time there. So this lifecycle management really works very easy on the slide, right? We move the service catalog items which are in operations into the retired. And of course, something comes in from the PMO, which we then need to staff and automate and operate. Simple and on the slide, but certainly something which you need to think about before. And what I'm finding more and more customers are recognizing that value chain and that engineering effort, because that lipstick on the pig is a good start. But if you can't automate anything with it and you can't make any improvements on cost and flexibility and customer experience, you are not really thinking about the right goals. This gets me to the measurements. Measuring is also very important. What are the 3 things to measure? First, are you making any process improvements? Are you making any progress in how these systems of engagement or channels and how to reach you? Very important is that. Then, of course, you can't just measure the process, because if the process is good but your customer satisfaction isn't good, then you have only gone a third of the way. So you also need to understand is the quality which the process is outputting good as well. Outputting, is that even a word? I don't know. Continual improvement is the last one, measuring the improvements of gaining maturity. And maturity is gained through a variety of things, and we'll get to that as well in a minute. Keep in mind there are 2 acronyms, SMART and KISS, when you measure. So KISS SMART or SMART KISS, it's up to you how you want to do that. But it's got to be specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, timely. Keep it simple and stupid. Hopefully I don't offend you. But these are really good things to write on your board. I did not come up with them. I don't even know who did. Somebody smarter than I did came up with these acronyms. But very useful when you start measuring and putting metrics down. All right. So why do we want to measure? We want to measure because there are a variety of phases we're going through. First phase in service catalog management is the standardization and rationalization phase. Second is where we start operationalizing our service catalog. Once we've got it operationalized, we can optimize it, and then we capitalize on it. Now, you could have your service catalog and the items, the service families, in multiple of those phases. That's absolutely possible. You don't have to solve world hunger right away. In fact, I see many customers who say, let me start to standardize and rationalize first. Maybe their goal is to standardize on specific assets. We are having 3 types of Dell laptops, for example, inside Forrester. We've got a light model, a medium light model, and a heavy model. And that's what you can provision for. That certainly eliminates a set of support costs and savings around particular sourcing standards. That could be a very nice standardized and rationalization offering of your service catalog. And again, in this hardware and or, for example, software example, there's a lot of things you can gain. Cost of vendor sourcing, savings from volume discounts, you can just imagine. So that's phase one. Once you get to phase one, you can then start thinking, okay, how do I operationalize that? How do I enable self-service through a service catalog where you can, for example, enforce compliance? You eliminate some other intake channels. Maybe you don't want multiple people ordering and offering or buying Amazon clouds or CRM clouds. Maybe you want to offer that to them because you want control of it for governance and compliance reasons. And you don't want to be out of the loop because you want to be part of the loop because you might have to support it later on. It also allows you to manage expectations and get you a much better idea of consumption versus forecast. This is really where you start connecting the service catalog to the back end, where you start bringing in provisioning work, provisioning solutions which are there to allow you to become much more streamlined and save on that moose I was talking about earlier. Third phase is the optimization. This is where you start improving a variety of things. One example is the moment of truth. I don't know if you know that word, but it's really when your customers work with you, that customer experience, are you enjoyable to work with? Is it useful what you're serving me? And am I making customers happy? Maybe the onboarding of an employee for your HR organization is maybe beneficial to some extent, but IT hasn't really stepped up to the plate to make that easy. And so how can you optimize that? By having service levels, operational level agreements, having that portfolio there at some kind of a service portal where when your HR manager or somebody in sales and marketing wants to hire somebody, it's a simple process, it's a business process, and not necessarily an IT service, but it has multiple underlying IT services. Based on that, then, you can start thinking about measuring demand and cost, and you can start to prioritize. Now, we're getting a little bit into the topic of service portfolio management, and I didn't want to go down that path, but it's important that service catalogs are the avenue to the service portfolio. That allows you then to collaborate and prioritize across a variety of other processes so that when you see, for example, a lot of incidents around a particular topic, you can refocus resources. If you see a variety of problems, you might be able to reevaluate your assets or your vendor or whatever it is you're working with and you're challenged with. And last but not least, it's the capitalization of the actual effort. That means that you actually are truly managing service levels and quality of a service. So you are shifting your value equation, and that's very important to know. You are starting to have a conversation. You're able to capitalize on investments, and you're a business partner. Now you're no longer the utility or just a service provider. You actually are able to be in the boardroom, and your CIO will be able to have this conversation about, here's what we do inside IT, and this is what the value we're offering. And we have potentially outsourced some of it. We are SaaSifying some of it. And we're seeing that, yes, in this new project on customer loyalty or whatever it is, we can help you optimize and capitalize with what we are doing. Other ideas, account management. It allows you to be much better around having agreements and of course, have a possible way of chargebacking and showbacking to your business, because we all know the business always wants. If we don't have the right way to say, hey, if you want 2 more nines of availability, or 1 more, if we move from 99.99 to 99.999 availability of an application, it will cost us 16 times more. Mr. Customer, are you willing to pay that? You don't have that today because you don't really have that ability to look at the cost of that service they're consuming. And then, of course, you also can make some fact-based sourcing. It allows you to benchmark. Are you making the right choices on your clouds, on your outsourcing? Are you using the right negotiation strategies for your sourcing and vendor managers to do service integration, service level agreements of one-to-many outsourcers, which you've signed on to do multiple things for you? I think that's important as well. So give Joe some time, conclusions and some recommendations. In 2012, the service catalog was hot. You can see here when we asked, and this is from the ITSMF survey at the USA League in October, my colleague Glenn O'Donnell did that survey. There were quite a few customers who had either in place or in progress successful service catalog activities. There are 16% which said they're in place but they have no benefit. If you belong to them, call me, call Joe, call PMG. I think we can help you. Very important to recognize. Challenges are quite a bit. I see sometimes technology, it's a project, it's a good thing, so let's buy a service catalog tool. Well, don't get down that, just go down to that lipstick on the pig. You got to think bigger. It's too difficult to define the services. It's too easy to focus on technology items and lower level items. Yeah, but it's a good start. Go work from there. You also need to make sure that you do have a good goal, a goal which defines that you need to figure out what and where and what you want to do. And then last but not least, and sometimes we are a bit guilty of this IT ivory tower, and we push things out to the business with some kind of a victorious fanfare here, and unfortunately it falls flat on its nose. Service catalog is an engineering project, but it can't be just an IT engineering project. It has to align and work with your business. If you don't do that, you are at some point, if you don't make that connection at some point, you actually end up like this. And I've seen many, many customers. So as a conclusion, recommendations, hopefully, think service engineering. Be clear about your goals. Link IT to the business, because service catalogs are not about technology. They're really about streamlining that connection of that alignment we've been chasing down ever since I've been in IT. I think this is a great opportunity for us. Now, leave you with one slide, which we're currently working on and using for a landscape report. There's tons and tons of things to consider. Don't get too scared about it, but really your service catalog is an interface into a variety of things you do and has to have integrations to lower parts like ERP and ITSM solutions, asset management, BPM solutions, and they need to have a way to be available through requests. They have to have prices and knowledge, and the interfaces need to be mobile and web, because if I'm in the airport and I need to do something, I need some kind of a mobile interface. So keep that in mind, and from here on, I'll give it over to you. I want to thank you. If you have any questions, we'll get to that after Joe. So Joe, back to you.
Thanks, Eveline. Okay, so building upon the principles that Eveline just shared with us, those same principles that make an IT service catalog a smart idea makes it a smart idea for other shared service departments within your organization. First of all, you're going to get a higher customer satisfaction if they are ordering or requesting services, either HR or facilities, through a service catalog. It's an interface that they like. It's an interface they're used to. They're probably shopping online during the workday anyway, so they know how to use it. Another benefit of using service catalogs outside of just IT is it helps position IT as a thought leader. It's a technology that IT can bring to the organization proactively, as opposed to reacting to sales getting mad because they can't get a report, or finance getting mad because SAP's down. So it really positions IT more as a thought leader and a proactive business partner. And finally, the other key benefit of going to an enterprise catalog is it really opens up additional sources of funding. Right now, IT service catalog funding from IT is looked as a cost. If you start pushing it out to the business and using the catalog to actually drive, to the point of actually driving business revenue, you're going to get some additional funding, and you're going to be able to do more with your existing investments. So what are some of the best practices of going enterprise with a service catalog? Following the Forrester value chain, you start with standardize. You want your service catalog to be tied to your enterprise login, so we know who you are when you log in the catalog. And you want the services presented to be role-driven. And you want those services presented in business terms, not in IT terms. Then you want to be able to take it to the next level, is operationalize. And that's looking at a single pane of glass for any type of request. Whether you're requesting access to a financial system, whether you're onboarding a new employee, provisioning a server in the cloud, it needs to be one place to go. It doesn't pay to have an actionable service catalog if your end users don't know where to go to get to that actionable service catalog. The next level up is the optimization. This is where you start looking at integration into other enterprise systems. If your onboarding entails IT, because you need to provision a network account and a voice over IP phone and a laptop, but HR, so you can get in payroll, facilities, so you can actually have a desk in your office and a chair, and maybe security, both from system access and building access. That is all part of one business service. And you need to make sure that you integrate to the existing fulfillment systems that these departments are working with. You're never going to get a finance person to work in Remedy. You're never getting an IT person to work in PeopleSoft. That's just not going to happen. So you want to make sure that for any given business request, the fulfillers of that request can work in their existing systems. Another part of that optimization is the ability to automate the fulfillment process. You shouldn't be paying somebody to read a Remedy ticket, swivel their chair around, and enter somebody into an additional Active Directory group. That's the kind of thing that can be automated. Same thing with provisioning a virtual server. You can take a credit card to get a server on Amazon in about 5 minutes. That's the same level of responsiveness that your end users are going to expect of the IT department. So find a way to automate that so you can meet the service levels that are set by outside forces. And then finally is capitalize. The best way you're going to show value of the IT department is with hard dollar savings. And the only way you're going to track those hard dollar savings is to track the cost of services, the price of services, and be able to push those back to the consumers that are actually using those services. And this can be some very complex cost allocations, either by user or by department or by location. But you need to go to that level, because then you will be able to prove to the business the value that you're providing from IT. So now that you're following the path, what are some of the key tool attributes you need? Well, two of the things that came out as I was looking at Eveline's slides were you need flexibility and you need agility. Borrowing from her graph here, where she's showing the speed of complexity of the business. Businesses are getting more complex, and they're getting more complex faster. So first of all, flexibility. You need a very dynamic interface layout. You need to be able to have different types of question sets based on the type of service. An onboarding request is going to have a very different set of questions from a server request. The questions need to be able to be driven from each other. So your answer to question A should change the responses in question B, and so on. You also need agility. What we're saying here is that the speed of the catalog, the speed of rate of change of the catalog, needs to be greater than or equal to the speed of the rate of change of the business. Otherwise, you'll deploy a catalog, the business will quickly outgrow it, and then you'll be stuck with a tool that's obsolete. As part of that speed of change, you need to really focus on things like configuration versus coding, using standard functionality versus custom functionality, and be able to quickly and easily support the upgrading to new versions of the software. So where do you want to start? You want to push this out outside of IT. As Eveline was explaining, you really need to meet the customer expectation to provide a service. And in order to do that, you need to understand the maturity level of your business, and PMG really recommends focusing on the business service catalog. The reason for that is the business user doesn't care about how. They care about when, and they care about how much. It's the IT user that cares about how. So if you want to drive adoption and acceptance and growth of the catalog, focus on the business service catalog first. An example of that is a contrast to two PMG clients, both Fortune 500s. The first one was a very IT-focused deployment. We had long conversations around what's a category structure, what's a taxonomy, but that was all within IT. I'm talking about the ivory tower of IT. IT knows what the hierarchy should be, but they didn't get any end user input. They focused a lot on using ITIL lingo like incident problem change, but if you're opening up an incident ticket in the catalog, an end user doesn't know the difference between urgency and impact. They just know how much it hurts. So that's the question you should ask them. How much does it hurt? And then use the catalog to go ahead and map the urgency and impact. And the other thing they were doing, they're really selling the value of IT instead of bringing the value. And so they're investing money to show how much value, and again, versus just investing money to bring the value. In contrast to that, we had a business-focused deployment where it was all about the business terms, all about the high volume requests, and a strong focus on automation. They wanted to take the time it took to provision a laptop from a few days to a few hours. A server from same thing, a few days to a few minutes. They wanted to be able to manage things like employee status change. So the end result of those two deployments, for the ITIL focus, we launched 25 services in 9 months. And for the business focus one, we've launched 250 services in 3 months. Again, it was all about the customer and the business. Where are some areas that we're seeing the service catalog expand outside of IT? For the key areas, first of all, security, looking for role and identity management. Service catalog can be that front-end interface to request system access for things like SAP, but again in business terms. If you're trying to onboard an accountant of level 2, that might require 30 or 40 specific permissions in SAP. The end user doesn't know that. They just know it's an accountant. Use the catalog to determine those 30 or 40 permissions, get the approvals, and provision it. Eveline talked about HR onboarding, key business service. The requester knows 3 things: the name, the start date, and the job. Everything else, from where they're going to sit, what their phone number is, all that needs to happen, but the end user doesn't really care. He just wants it done. We looked at some financial aspects of the catalog, with doing travel authorization, check requests, again, using the workflow engine of the catalog to do approvals. And finally, my favorite, marketing with the 2-drink minimum. You can use the catalog to request things like campaign management. Example would be something like Coke running Olympic promotion. They just care about running the promotion. They want to go ahead and say, we're going to need a server for people to check 2 million bottle tops to see if people want a prize. They don't know what the server should be hosted on. They don't know about the underlying operating system. They just need to know it's big enough to handle 2 million hits a day. Again, top features of the Enterprise Service Catalog, simple and flexible. You don't want to have to train your end users. It's got to be easy to configure and minimal coding so you can keep pace with the change of the business. You want to leverage the integration to existing fulfillment systems. Companies have spent millions or tens of millions implementing systems from HP, SAP, IBM, and those systems are doing their job. So let's leverage that. The other thing that does is it allows you to avoid vendor lock-in. If one of those vendors is not doing their job, the service catalog basically gives you a layer to separate the business user from the fulfillment layer. And if you change who's providing those services, it doesn't have any impact on the end user whatsoever. Eveline talked about automation as a must. You have to be able to automate in order to continue to drive costs down and provide additional value. And finally, the last piece is showing the financial management. So in summary, let's focus on the customer experience, understand their underlying motivating factors, and make sure we meet those. PMG highly recommends focusing on the business service catalog versus the technical service catalog, because that will help drive the adoption and acceptance of the catalog, and those savings will help get additional funding for additional expansion. And then follow the best practice roadmap of standardize, operationalize, optimize, and capitalize. So we've got a few minutes left for some questions. One of the first questions that's thrown out, and I'm going to point this over to Eveline, I think, is what are the main changes you need to make to an existing service catalog to enable it to adapt to cloud services? How's that for a good one without giving you any warning whatsoever?
The main changes to make to a service catalog to adapt to cloud services. Not really sure what the individual is after.
I think what we're saying is you've got a service catalog, again, I'm guessing from reading it, is if you've got a service catalog that is presenting IT self-service like laptops, hardware, software, what do you think you might need to change to enable it to provision things like servers in the cloud? I think that's what it means.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, you have, it all depends. You can certainly do that, but you have to have some kind of a service level agreement or provisioning behind it, which automates all of that, right? I mean, whatever the mechanisms you're doing that today in with either a some kind of a provisioning, cloud provisioning solution from that vendor, be it Amazon or somebody else out there, you have to tie into that. You have to integrate with that. And if that's the question, it doesn't matter what's behind the service catalog. No matter if you are doing an on-prem, an off-prem provisioning of something, you've got to integrate with something else and understand the pricing and the details and the contract and track it and manage it from there. This gets into the topic of service broker, and we're seeing more and more IT organizations to become service brokers in this model of applying the service catalog in hybrid or public or private cloud scenarios of all kinds. And if you're interested in some research there, do send me an email at Ehrlich@Forrester.com or connect with Joe at PMG I can get you some research on that if you're in this area and need more details.
And I just
thank you for flipping up.
I advanced the slides so you
Great
don't have to
idea.
guess how to spell either one of our last names.
There you go.
Another good
Thank you.
Another good question we got was, who do we think should own the service catalog program within an enterprise?
Yeah, it depends on. I do think there needs to be a group and a particular ownership. There needs to be somebody on the RACI chart who is the R of that, the responsible. And this can be in the service management organization. This could be. It all depends. It's hard to say where that belongs. But I see more and more service management organizations, which are part of the office of the CIO or a subset of the of infrastructure and operations, maybe a level below. There is a service portfolio team. And that team owns, to some extent, the coordination, the correlation, the continuous measurements, the metrics, and they correlate and work almost like a director of an orchestra with a variety of resources and folks inside IT and, of course, externally in the consumers of the business services and IT services to direct that effort. It should be a particular group. And then for each service, of course, there's a service owner, and that's their day job. Do they sometimes report into that service catalog organization? Sometimes they do, maybe for the beginning, but usually they're either part of IT, of an IT group, like for example, maybe it's the asset management group, with a particular owner who owns a particular software, or the IMAC process, or it's somebody in the business who owns the CRM application. But there has to be a owner with an R, one R on the RACI chart, with multiple A's, multiple C's, and multiple I's.
Great. Thank you. I think we have time for one last question, and it is, my own IT team is leery of launching a service catalog. How do I convince them it's the right thing to do?
I think the first thing, it again depends. Go into your service request, go into your service desk or mingle with your service desk manager. Ask him or her to show you the service requests coming in, and ask him or her again the time spent on these service requests, and calculate that into dollars. You have a business case. If you don't have any service requests, then look for other things which are maybe not happening right now, meaning that there are customers out there who are using a variety of manual processes, reaching, doing, ordering. I was just recently in a very large oil and gas where they had a tremendous amount of manual work for onboarding employees. Maybe use one of those examples we've shared with you and put some dollar figures on it, what you could do if you would have this automated. That savings of time and effort and money can be taken into a service catalog effort and then extended to something else. It's all about left shifting. It's all about shifting resources from that maintaining of ongoing system environment, that manual work, to something which becomes much more easier and much more inexpensive to do. And if you still have a problem, call me. Send me an email. I'll help you.
Thank you very much. That's about all the time we have right now. I just want to let everybody know that we're going to be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Eveline or myself. And also, if you'd like a PDF copy of the slides, you can send an email to info@PMG.net, and we'll gladly follow up and send you a copy. Thank you again, Eveline, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.